She must know the real you. She must know the true depth of your heart, of your integrity, of your love, of your commitment. Without that, you cannot build a long-term happy marriage. The chemistry, the masculine and feminine energy, which for many couples might be one of the first things that happen in a relationship, when you're actually repairing a marriage and you're healing a relationship, it cannot be number one. If she doesn't feel your unconditional love, what you do is going to make you look insincere. The strategy that I use to turn around in my marriage, which is the same strategy my students use right now. Any marriage, in order to build it, in order for it to thrive, in order for it to be long-term, in order for both husband and wife to be happy and satisfied and fulfilled, requires unconditional love. We're talking to men right now, that you absolutely care about your wife and you really care about her happiness. And a lot of guys look at unconditional love and they think they have it. Their real motivation for staying in a marriage can sometimes be because of the kids, or because they want to honor their vows, or because of religious reasons. And none of those are bad reasons, but none of those are actually going to work long term, because over time your wife is going to feel if your heart is in it or not. If you're just staying in a marriage because you feel stuck and you have to, or you feel committed, or she will feel over time if your heart is really in it and you really care about her happiness. That's what unconditional love really means, at least by my definition. And this is the working definition that I've seen that has worked to turn around hundreds of marriages. That's number one. So a marriage requires unconditional love. Number two, it requires emotional connection. A lot of guys make the mistake of talking to their wives, or trying to interact, have conversations, come to agreements, talk about the past, apologize. They try to have logical conversations before there's emotional connection. If you don't have emotional connection, if she's not interested in what you have to say, if she's not open to it, if there is a wall around her heart, around her mind, around her psyche, then talking to her not only won't help you, it actually hurts you. Imagine someone is talking to you, or someone is trying to sell you something and you're not interested. It's actually a big turnoff. Even if you may be interested in the item, but if you're not ready for that conversation, you're not ready to look at that car, and a car salesman starts talking to you about it, it's going to disturb you. Similarly, when you have conversations with your wife prematurely before emotional connection, even if your conversation would otherwise make sense and it's logical and you are fair and you're trying to do your best and you're sincere, since it's premature, it's actually going to mess you around. So number three, the actual conversations have to be intelligent. They can't be conversations where she shuts down. You have to know how to open her up, how to make her feel safe, how to make her feel connected, how to ask questions, make statements, sum things up, and essentially impress and shock her over and over again. Okay, so those are three things so far. Unconditional love, number one. Number two, emotional connection. And number three, the ability to handle conversations, navigate conversations, and really impress her during those conversations and keep them interesting. It shouldn't be a monologue. Number four, psychological intimacy. The ability for her to see the true you and for you to see the true her. People go through lives, couples go through lives, and over time their personality gets split. They have their deeper inner feelings, and then they have their facade, their external personality, how they show up practically as a mother, as a wife, or in your case, as a husband, as a father, as a provider. But over time, when there's a disconnect between a couple, the wife stops seeing the real you, and she's basically stuck with the version of you in the past. And I want you to understand this. Psychological intimacy is step four. A marriage needs it. She must know the real you. She must know the true depth of your heart, of your integrity, of your love, of your commitment. Without that, you cannot build a long-term happy marriage. And number five is sexual intimacy. The chemistry, the masculine and feminine energy chemistry, which for many couples might be one of the first things that happen in a relationship. But when you're actually repairing a marriage and you're healing a relationship, it cannot be number one. It is the cement and the glue that will keep you together, but it's typically number five. It comes after you're operating from a place of unconditional love. Once you have that emotional connection in place and she's interested in talking to you. Number three, you're navigating those conversations effectively and intelligently and consistently. And then number four, she gets to see the real person over time. She starts trusting you, and that's when the sexual passion kicks in. Okay, those are the five things a marriage needs. We're going to elaborate today on the things that you need to actually make that happen, the skills that the husband needs. So there are 5 skills that a husband needs. Number 1 is the ability to know the difference between a fundamental and a symptom. The fundamentals are things that if you don't fix them, they're going to keep driving more and more problems. Couples that have frustrations in their relationship typically have many different types of problems. It could be disrespect, it could be intimacy, communication, financial disagreements, how to raise kids. In communication itself, it could be explosive communication, it could be ice communication, it could be a lack of communication, ignoring, there could be stonewalling, shutdowns. In order for you to heal your marriage, not just to heal it, but to build a marriage that you're proud of and that you and your wife are a role model to your kids, there are 5 fundamentals you have to identify. All this is part of fundamentals. And then we'll go through another 4 skills. You have to be able to see what are the things that you're saying or doing which is blocking you from feeling unconditional love. That is a fundamental thing, because once you can see what those things are, a lot of your symptoms go away. Number 2, another fundamental, you don't see problems in the relationship while they're small and easy to fix. When you solve these fundamental things, or if you don't solve them, you will keep having more and more problems, because you're going to be playing whack-a-mole. And essentially, this is what I call marriage cancer, where you're trying to do the right thing, but inadvertently you're feeding the problem. So the cause, number 1, is that she doesn't feel unconditional love. Number 2, you can't see problems in the relationship when they're small and easy to fix. Number 3, she has a wrong picture of you in her head. She has an image of you, an idea, an opinion. Let's say that you're controlling or manipulative, or that you're never going to change, or she doesn't trust your change is not going to last. That's stuck in her head. That's a fundamental issue. When you solve it, a lot of things fall into place. Number 4, you don't know how to keep her happy. You keep following her lists, or you may have given up on following her lists because you sense that it's not helping anyway, but it doesn't work. And number 5, she believes she already tried. It's a fundamental problem. If a woman believes that she already tried to invest her heart in a relationship for a long period of time, and she feels that you didn't do your part, even once you start to do your part, you cannot expect her to do her part because she feels she already gave it a shot. No, this doesn't mean that the marriage is too far gone. Not at all. I've seen hundreds of guys turn around their marriages even once their wife said that she's done. But it's important for you to understand this is a fundamental issue. Skill number 2 that husbands need, ignoring symptoms. Once we discuss what fundamentals are, the question is, what are symptoms and what do you do about them? So the way you want to look at fundamentals and symptoms is like a tree and fruit. The tree is the fundamental, the fruit are the symptoms. If you have a good, healthy tree, it's going to make healthy fruit. Similarly, if you have fundamental problems in the marriage, it's going to create problems that are frustrating. If you heal the fundamental problems, you'll have healthier fruit. And when an issue comes up, you'll be able to deal with it and fix it, and it's not going to keep coming up again and again. For example, the fruit in a marriage, we're talking about negative fruit, symptoms. Maybe your wife is in an affair. She has served you divorce papers. You're separated. You don't have any intimacy, or it's frustrating. She does it as a chore. There's a lack of respect, or she mouths off at you in front of the kids. These are all symptoms. The thing is, the problem a lot of guys fall into, and this is the next skill that guys need in order to turn around their marriages, is to stop getting sucked into the symptom. Sometimes the symptom has to be addressed. Sometimes you have to deal with it because you don't have a choice. For example, if you serve your divorce papers, or you're navigating a conversation about custody or finances, and you have to respond. So you may have to deal with it. However, that's not where your marriage is being saved. Your marriage is not being saved by you avoiding separation, by fighting separation, by you giving in to her. It's not being saved by you snooping on her affair or finding out all the gory details. That's not where the solution is going to happen. Some symptoms need to be ignored. The mistake a lot of guys do is they try to fix the symptoms. They try to fix the intimacy. They try to work on the respect. They try to work on the communication. They try to work on the finances. They try to work on making agreements, avoiding separation, doing everything she wants. Number 1, it's going to frustrate you, because if you keep on doing everything and you're not getting the result that you want, you're going to get tired after a certain point. And the problem isn't you just get tired. The problem is you're going to get resentful. And once you get resentful, it's going to block her from feeling your unconditional love. You might feel love for her, but the resentment is going to block her from feeling your unconditional love. So on her emotional radar, she's going to just register the resentment. And women are very emotionally intelligent, and they pick up on these things. The second reason why you shouldn't be chasing symptoms is because it actually communicates the wrong message to her. When you chase symptoms, it actually communicates that you're desperate. It sometimes communicates that you're trying to control her, even if you're not. To put it this way, it basically tells her that you're guessing. If you do everything she says, where you're trying to fix every single problem in the marriage without understanding the difference in a fundamental and a symptom, you're basically guessing. You're essentially telling her that you don't really know what you're doing. It's important to get that. Number 3, here we're going to go a little bit deeper and start bringing some of the things together from the previous points, because these skills are really interconnected. It's like a recipe. It's not like when you make a cake, you may have flour and chocolate and eggs and oil and sugar, but once it's in the cake, it's one cake. It's not like you're going to see 5 different ingredients floating around in your cake, right? So similarly, we're talking about these ingredients or these skills within a marriage separately, but if you pay close attention to this, you're going to notice how these skills really interact and overlap And in this skill that I'm about to teach you, we're going to bring some of these things together. The third thing, which is very important, is to use subconscious communication. The reason why you have to use subconscious communication is because this is going to help you get to the root of the things that are feeding your marriage cancer. In other words, the question is, why doesn't my effort matter? If I care about my wife and I love her and I'm trying to please her, why doesn't it work? And this is a question that bothered me for many years, and my clients as well. Why is our effort not working? If I really care about my wife and I love her and I want her to be happy, why isn't it working? So the way it works is that there are two types of communication. There's classic communication, which guys try to use all the time, which works really well in business, which works really well in the workplace. It may even work to some degree pretty well with your kids on some level. It does not work in intimate relationships. Classic communication relies on logic comes first. There's an opinion. And then, based on an opinion, you make a decision or an agreement with somebody else. Now, that's not the way it works in relationships. When it comes to women will use classic communication in their professional lives. And women can be very smart in that area. It will not work for them emotionally when it comes to their intimate relationship, when it comes to talking about their marriage. Subconscious communication means they first look at the picture of who you are. She has an image of you. She sees a certain idea of you in her head. It's a picture. She sees it. Based on that, she gets a feeling. And that feeling tells her whatever that feeling is. I feel safe. I don't feel safe. I trust him. I don't trust him. Essentially, that feeling creates an opinion. And then she'll use logic. In other words, logic is the very last thing in subconscious communication, which is why logic doesn't work. If you try to have a conversation with her and work things out in a logical way and say, hey, look, I've done what we've agreed on. We've done this. We've agreed on this. And here we are. Why don't we try this? It won't work. You may have noticed this and ask yourself this question. Have you noticed that your wife will say something which seems logical, but then a week or two later, she'll say something different, which may be logical as well, but it's very inconsistent with what you said 2 weeks ago. You know what I'm talking about? Where you make an agreement, you follow it, and then she switches it. She changes the list that she wants. She changes her expectations. She changes her, is really not the language they use when it comes to their intimacy. This does not mean that they're not smart. They can be very smart in their professional lives. It has nothing to do. When it comes to intimacy, what's going to determine their opinion of you is their feeling, and their feeling is going to be based off of the image they have of you. Imagine you sit in a restaurant. Close your eyes for a minute and imagine this, because it's going to help you understand. You're sitting in a restaurant and a cat walks up to you. It's dressed like a waiter, has a bow tie, has a little sign that says, write down your order, or tell me your order. I'm recording what you're saying. And you tell the cat what you want. You read off the menu what you want. Okay, this is your appetizer. This is your main course. And the cat just walks away, comes back 15, 20 minutes later with your entree, with your appetizer and all that. Now, it may be cute, but close your eyes for a minute and ask yourself a question. Do you feel that the cat gets it? Do you feel that the cat really processed your information? Or do you feel that there was somebody behind some automated system that was paying attention to the recording and giving instructions to the chef, and that the cat itself was just cute and executing? It doesn't actually understand service, doesn't actually understand what your preferences are, doesn't really care about your happiness or your customer satisfaction. The answer is, it may be very cute and entertaining, but it actually doesn't mean anything, because there is a feeling that the cat is a cat. It doesn't really get it. Okay, I'm saying in a nutshell so you understand what subconscious communication is. When a husband shows up in his marriage and executes the list that his wife wants, or the things that he thinks that she wants, or the things that she said she wants, and therefore he tries to do them. If the wife has an image of him in her head, which is stuck, she feels he's an angry person. She feels he's desperate for her, which is not attractive. It doesn't create respect or passion, or she feels he's controlling her. His changes are not going to last. If she's stuck with that image, no matter what you do, you're going to look like a cat. In other words, you might think I'm being the waiter, I'm giving, I'm loving, I'm sharing, I'm committed, but in her mind, it registers as an act, which, by the way, cat and act are the same exact letters. So just a cute little way of remembering it. It looks like an act that doesn't matter what you do, and in fact, the more you do, the more you look desperate, and the more it actually blocks her from feeling your unconditional love. If she doesn't feel your unconditional love, what you do is going to make you look insincere. And that's why it's very important to actually not do too much, but to do the things that address what is that picture in her head? What fed that picture? What do you do now that's making that picture worse? And then fixing it from there, which leads us to the next point, a very important piece. Once you see what that picture is in her head, once you understand subconscious communication, once you can read her mind essentially correctly, then you need to respond intelligently. Skill number one is to see, when is it that she sees me as a cat? What are the things that I'm doing that makes her think that I'm faking? Then from there, you have to develop intuition. And there's a cute story that's going to help you understand this, that brings up this point about this Jewish guy back in the 40s who was trying to get U.S. citizenship. And in order to get citizenship, you have to demonstrate a very basic understanding of English. So he didn't know a stitch of English, not a word. So his friend was trying to help him cheat the system. So he tells him, his name was Moses Weiss. He says, Moses, listen. He says, You don't really have to know English because I know the system and how the clerks do ask their questions. They always ask it in the same sequence. So if you just memorize the answers, you don't have to understand the questions. Okay, so he says the first question they're going to ask you is who was the first president of the United States. So just say George Washington. After you see the guy finishes his first question, don't worry about if you understood the question or not. Just say George Washington. The second question they're going to ask you is how many states are there in America. Just say 50. All right. Number 3, they're going to ask you what is your name. So say Moses Weiss. And number 4, he says they're going to ask you how many kids you have. So you're going to say 5. And that's the end of it. You pass the interview, you get your citizenship. Very good. So Moses Weiss rocks up to this interview, and the clerk goes ahead and asks him his first question. He asks him, what's your name? He changed the sequence of the questions because they sometimes do change the sequence. The clerk finished his question, so he goes, George Washington. The clerk gives him this weird look. He goes, how many kids do you have? So he says, 50. 50 kids. Gives him another weird look. He says, what's the name of the first president of the United States? So he says, Moses Weiss. And how many states are there? He says 5. Okay. And then there's an end to the story. It actually was a true story. What actually ended up happening was pretty funny. But the point over here is, relating it to marriage, this is the problem that happens in marriages. Guys, they script ideas in their head, what they're going to say to their wives, but they don't actually know, they don't develop the intuition to know how to pivot. Pivoting means to know how to read a situation, how to respond to a situation, when to apologize, when to listen, when to ignore, when to tell her you appreciate, when to talk about your commitment, when to talk about your love, when to talk about the past, when to stand up for yourself, to know how to navigate it, and that conversation evolves. That is a vital skill. And a lot of guys don't realize the importance of it, and they try to get like scripts that may have worked for another marriage, but won't work for theirs because they're not reading the situation correctly. So the 4th skill, a vital skill, is developing intuition, is knowing how to navigate a conversation, how to exit, how to start, how to keep it going, how to ask a question, how to make a statement, and when to ignore sometimes. And you can't script it. The first thing you gotta understand is you can't script it because he's gonna sound like this Moses Weiss who comes up and asks him, what's your name? He says George Washington, because all he knows is he was memorizing the script, but he never actually understood English. So he sounds as silly as a joke is. Now that's the 4th skill. 5th skill is you got to protect your needs, which means a lot of guys, as they're trying to heal their marriage, they ignore what they want. They forget or they're afraid to stand up for themselves or to voice their opinions or to voice their decisions or to disagree with their wives about custody, about separation, about finances, or whatever it is. They're afraid to rock the boat. But what you don't realize is if you don't stand up for your needs, you're going to run into 2 problems. Problem number 1 is you're going to get frustrated. If your needs are not met and you feel you're being stepped on, it is going to undermine your emotional stamina, essentially your energy to invest in the marriage, because it's going to build resentment, it's going to build frustration, it's going to rob you from your ability to actually do the things that you need to do to win back your wife's love. Number 2, and this is more devious and a lot of guys don't realize this. This is very important. If you don't stand up for yourself, you're essentially breaking trust. Because you're showing your wife that you went from being this guy that was, whatever you want to call it in her eyes, selfish, disconnected, not emotionally present, insensitive, whatever it was. And now you suddenly have no opinions. You're being really nice, really good. When you become really nice and really good too fast, that actually looks like an act. You may mean it sincerely. And I've seen so many guys who mean it sincerely. But in your wife's eyes, it looks like an act. You look like the cat that we said before. You look like you're putting up a show. One of the ways to show you're not putting up a show is to carefully and strategically pick certain areas where you're going to disagree with her. Not in a way that undermines the marriage. There's no point to do that, right? But as you heal the marriage, you have to pick areas that show her you have opinions, you have decisions, you are still your own person, and that you haven't disappeared, because otherwise it casts a shadow of doubt and it breaks trust about who you are. You're saying you're becoming a certain person, and it's actually hard to believe it when you don't fight intelligently. Again, when I say fight, I mean disagree. Standing up, voicing your opinions, voicing your decisions. And again, you have to have an agenda. It just has to be an intelligent one. I'm not saying just go and fight. That'll be a dumb thing. But it's important for guys to understand it, that you have to do it in a way that doesn't undermine what you're doing. But you cannot ignore this that I've seen a lot of guys neglect. They just become this great guy, and she doesn't trust him because what she's thinking is, oh, how long can this last? Once he gets me back, once the separation is over, once I open up my heart back to him, guess what's going to happen? The old version of him is going to come back. So you basically are building that lack of trust. And the way you need to do it correctly is to build the trust by picking areas where you're going to disagree with her at the same time while you're transforming into other things I just said, by identifying fundamentals, ignoring the symptoms, using subconscious communication, developing your intuition. Those are the 5 skills.